Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is my guide to help everybody get through MyGM with as little pain as possible. Just trying to help you all get off to the best start that you possibly can. So let's get stuck straight into this. And it all begins with your choice of GM. There are no real good or bad choices here. Everyone's got their advantage. But if you take a look at the far right, you've got your custom superstars. So some people want to create themselves, or someone like Teddy Long or someone like that you just want to be able to play as. The bonus of having that is they will take your least popular star and they will add 20 popularity to them, essentially making them the best star on your roster for the most part. That could even be a core that you've created yourself that you just want to be in the main event all the time. It'll really help them boost their stats and get them right to the top of the ladder for you, so you can really start to use them and they can be effective right from the word go. So that's not a bad option if you want to go down that route. Just be aware that if you do put them in as GM, you will not be able to use them as an active part of your roster going forward. Next, we'll take a quick look at Stephanie. Now, Stephanie is the one that you want to use, especially for those shorter games where money is really important early on to upgrade your logistics and get new stars and really keep that roster moving. She can do that. Playing a card like this, especially on your first pay-per-view, can net you a lot of money and will be able to set you up with more superstars, better logistics, and all of those types of things moving forward. That's really important if you're going to win this game. She also works really well with one of the other brands, but we'll get into that just a little bit later because it can make her one of the better managers to have with the right combination. So next, we're going to have a quick look at Shane. Now, Shane's not really one of my favorites because it's all to do with GM run-ins. Now, if you've used a GM run-in before, you'll know that, yes, you can alter the outcome of a match, but you can also upset the star that you run in on, which can cause other problems down the track. I'm not really a fan of this one. This could be a really good one to set as your opposition because it's probably not going to affect you a great deal. It's more going to affect their brand. But the bonus that you do get, especially on that first pay-per-view, which is one of the most important parts of that game mode, it can give you a massive boost. And again, it will set you up for that run from week 6 up to week 10, which is where you're really going to set up your entire season. Whether it's only a 15-week series or a 50-week series, it's always important to get that second part up and running as best as you can to give yourself that advantage. Next, we're going to take a look. Actually, I'm going to skip William Regal just for now. We'll come back to him in a minute. We'll have a look at Sonya Deville. Again, not one that I personally use very much. The boost to morale is quite handy though, especially if you make a few mistakes early on and you have stars that are coming to you demanding things that you're turning down because it doesn't really fit the idea that you have in mind. Morale can drop really quickly, and especially in a 15-week series, you don't want stars leaving in the first 6 weeks because it's very hard to keep that roster up and running. And even for a longer one, if you don't have a roster early on, you can't fill the cards properly. You're mismatching stars just to fill the card every week, and it can be a real disadvantage. So that little bit of morale boost can help quite a lot. But again, you'd have to be a little bit more of an experienced player to tackle this one. I wouldn't advise it straight off the bat, but if you want to add that little bit more of a challenge to it, by all means, pick Sonya Deville. The good thing is, though, this isn't a card that you have to play at a certain time. You can always save it for when you really need it, when morale is a little bit low on the roster. The next one that we're going to look at is actually one of my favorites, is Adam Pearce. Now, this boost that he gives to rivalries is so very important in that first part of the game. You can start to build up your rivalries in those first 4 weeks to set up your pay-per-view. But what might happen, sometimes you want a rivalry, it doesn't quite kick off in that first week, it doesn't quite build the way that you want to, or you just can't fit enough stars into your show where you want them in those first 4 weeks. So you might only have level 2 or 3 rivalries moving into your first pay-per-view. And this is where you want to have level 3, level 4 rivalries preferably. So playing this card at your first pay-per-view is going to give you really strong rivalries and going to set you up in so many ways moving forward, because then you can refresh, you can start new rivalries in that second part of the game and keep moving forward. He's extremely strong both in the start and the second part of the game, but everyone's favorite, or at least a lot of people's favorite, is William Regal. Everyone loves to get those legends into the game. You know, you want your Undertaker in there, you want your Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, all of those wonderful legends that we got in the DLC packs. You want your roster to be full of these guys. So Regal is the great one to play. You play this card, you then go into your legends and you pick the guy that you want or lady that you want. Just remember, when you pick them, make sure you get someone that has a 10-week contract. That way you can maximize this card, given that you get them for free and you don't have to renew their contracts every 5 weeks. If you're only playing a short game, that is perfect to play the week after your first pay-per-view, because you'll have that legend from then right till the end of the game. If you want to play it early, if you weren't quite happy with some of the picks that you had in your draft and you want someone with a major popularity boost, again, play this card in the first week. You can set up your rivalries and it'll be smooth sailing right up to that first pay-per-view. You can really get everything set up. Just be aware that you will come into a contract negotiation after that 10-week period. Hopefully by then your financials will be in a much better place, so that way contract negotiations aren't going to be that big a deal. You'll be able to re-sign them if you want. If you really don't need them, if your roster is good enough, you can just let them go. And you've had that superstar for free and he's done the job that you wanted him to do. Once you've chosen your GM, we move on to the brands. The first one that we're going to take a look here is NXT UK. Now, this particular one is actually the one I prefer to use Stephanie with, because as you see there, you get a major boost in finances. So if you use both Stephanie's card and this card on your first pay-per-view, if you set everything up correctly, you can quite easily net $500,000 at the end of that pay-per-view, and that sort of money can pretty much buy all the logistics that you need. It can get you a legend. It might be able to get you another superstar. So if you needed to add more to your rivalries, if some of them have low stamina, it's the perfect way to set yourself up for that second part of the game. There are a lot of players that will advise against anything to do with finances because, especially in a longer game, towards that middle part, you end up with so much money that it doesn't really matter. You can buy whatever you want. You can book whatever you want. But in the early part of the game, it can really be a struggle. So I would advise using this, especially in a shorter game, because you're not going to have the time to build things up as much. So you want to get as far ahead with finances as you can, as early as you can. So pairing this one with Stephanie is a good combination to have. I know it's not really one of the glamour brands, but as far as trying to win the game mode is concerned, it's a really good option. Next we have NXT, and this one is really good, especially for the longer versions of the game where you've got more time to set up tag teams as well. Because if you can put 2 title matches plus the 2 tag team title matches on in your pay-per-view with well-booked stars, well-built-up rivalries, this is going to have a major payoff for the match ratings, and you can really take advantage of that massive influx of fans and money at the end of it, which is what this game mode is all about. Not to say that you won't get some benefit out of it if you've only got 2 title matches, especially in just a 15-week series, but I would probably advise against this one for a shorter game, especially if you're just starting out, because it is one that you really need to set up really well in order to get the most out of it. But once you're confident, definitely give this one a go. It'll be a little bit more challenging, but if you can really nail it, you'll see a massive advantage from playing this card at the right time. Maybe towards that second, third, maybe fourth pay-per-view in a longer game, you should really see the benefit from it. If you use the card with low popularity stars, you're probably not going to get much benefit. The next one we will have a look at though is Raw. Now Raw, again, I don't think this one is as good as it seems, simply because this card would be better if you could use it for a pay-per-view. That would really set your opponent back. But in the early game, losing 3 stars off your roster could really make it hard to build those rivalries. This is a good one to use, especially if you're playing against one of your friends rather than the AI, simply because you get to see the look on their face when they're trying to book matches and they can't use 3 of their best stars. One thing I will say about this one, do not pick this as your opponent, because they will play it within that first 4 weeks while you're trying to build everything up, and it will really put a spanner in the works for you. So just be aware when you're picking your opponent, do not pick Monday Night Raw unless you've got a plan to have a bigger roster and you really want that extra challenge, because it will frustrate you in the early part of the game, and that's not what it's all about. Now, of course, this one here is the best one in my personal opinion, Birth of Legends. If you are a beginner, pick this one because it will help you out immensely. As soon as you get into the game, after you've done your draft, go and use this card and boost 6 of your stars with extra popularity. It's going to help you book better quality matches, get those stars early, get those fans through the doors, get the money in the bank. It's really the best one to use. And even if you've played this a few times before, you're probably already aware. This one is definitely the one that gets you the best advantage at the start of the game. It can take a little bit of the challenge out, so it's up to you what type of game you want to play. If you want to give yourself just that little bit of a disadvantage at the start just to try and overcome those things to win the game, pick one of the other ones like NXT or Raw, or try and become a financial genius with NXT UK. There's a whole heap of different play styles, so play around with a few different ones as you go through the game, see what you like, set yourself a few different challenges, see what you can come up with. Now we move into the setup of the game and then into the draft. I will advise you to try a custom draft pool. Go into it, play around with the different superstars, see what you like, put in who you want. You can change legends to the active roster just so you can get them a little bit earlier. It's completely up to you how you want to do it. If you want to add cores into the game, just be aware if you add too many cores, it has been known to freeze and crash, and sometimes you won't be able to load back into that game, so you have to start all over again. I'm not sure if that problem has been fixed, but just be aware that too many cores can make that happen. For the difficulty, I always like playing on hard. It does give you that little bit more of a challenge. The opposition will get more fans a lot quicker, but it's completely up to you how you want to play that. If it's your first playthrough, I'd probably advise normal, but hard I think is the perfect difficulty for this mode. Now we're going to move into the draft, and there are a few things you've got to keep in mind when it comes to the draft. First of all is don't just stack it with the most popular guys because you'll run out of money really quickly, but you do want to start with 2 really good ones for the males and 2 good ones for the females. As I make my selections, I'm going to go through the reasons behind it. First of all, you want to match heels with baby faces. So you want one of each for the males, one of each for the females. Then you've got the class to look at. You've got to remember just these couple of things. If you have a bruiser, you match them up against a fighter. If you have a giant, match them up against a cruiser. Specialists can be subbed in anywhere, but you don't really get any bonus for using them. But they are handy to have just in case of injuries, or if you have your opposition use a card where you can't use certain stars for that week. Also, what I would do is if I have, for example, Goldberg, who's a bruiser, and he's also a babyface, you want to have 2 babyface bruisers and then 2 heel fighters. Because once a rivalry with each have finished, you can simply swap them over and start a brand new rivalry, and you still have a perfect balance of stars there. Always be aware of what you have and what you need on your roster to get the best results for matches each week. If you start having to put heels versus heels, baby faces versus baby faces, or if you mismatch a bruiser versus a giant, they do kind of penalize you for that, and it can make it really difficult to get those extra stars for the ratings, which will affect how many fans come in, how much money you make. So always look at the balance. Once you've picked your top 4 stars, start picking from mid-card or the bottom of the draft pool, because you want to save as much money as you can trying to get more guys on the roster, because you'll find really quickly that you can start running out of combinations, especially if you want to start doing tag teams, which I don't really advise early on, simply because it's a lot harder to set up a tag team division in this mode, which is something I hope they fix for the next game. Ideally, to start off in the draft, what I would be looking for is about 8 males and 4 females. If you can get 6 females, that is a little bit better, because you can start building them up with tag teams without interrupting your main title spot. Once you've got your first 4 males though, the second 4, I'd normally like to throw in whatever other combination I didn't use for the first 4. So in this case, I'll be looking for a giant and a cruiserweight, and then I'll throw in a couple of specialists just in case I need to mix things up a little bit. You can still build rivalries from specialists, and you can still get quite good results. You can also get results if you do put baby faces and heels against each other as well. It just won't work out as well as if you had one heel, one baby face. But don't forget, you can change from babyface to heel and vice versa with one of the promo spots if you run out of combinations to put up against each other. So don't feel like you're boxed in at any point. And also, the draft is just your starting point. So if you don't get Roman Reigns in your draft because he's too expensive, that's fine. It doesn't mean that you won't be able to get him down the track, or some of the other guys that you really want to use. There's always going to be opportunities in the later part of the game, or in the mid part of the game even, just to build your roster with other guys that you want. The draft is simply your starting point to make sure you build the best rivalries and get your show off to the best start that you possibly can. Draft pools are random, so don't think that Roman Reigns will be in every single one just because you have him as an active member. So all we're looking for at the moment is just balance across the guys that you start with. All active members of your roster will be available in the free agents if you don't get to pick them here. So don't worry too much about that now. We'll be able to get to them a little bit further on down the road. Once you've got your draft complete, it's time to set your champions. So for the men, our main rivalry, I want to be Goldberg and Finn. Finn has a slightly less popularity, but giving him the title will add 10 popularity to that, which will put him a little bit above Goldberg. And anything sort of around that 70 mark is going to be really, really good to start a rivalry or any match really. So that's going to be our combination for the men. Then for the women, I'll do the same thing with Ronda and Shayna. So I'll make Shayna the champion just to get her up close to that 70 mark. So her and Ronda will be a really good matchup to start with. Now when booking your matches, you want your first match and your main event to be your strongest on the card. Obviously the main event to be the strongest, just to get the best flow. Your mid card, you can fill, if you can get them to be strong, it's good, but it just works better when they're not as strong as the first and last. But first of all, go to your journal, check out the commissioner goal, because you can win different cards to play throughout the season. Now, with this one here, sometimes the challenges aren't very good or aren't going to fit with what you want to do, and the cards may not be that good either. To put a TLC match in the first week, first of all, we can't afford to do that, so it's not going to happen. But second of all, if you do that, you're going to probably end up injuring guys straight off the bat. Also, you want to have a look at your power cards, know what you've got. If you can buy them, something like this Vito Star, you play that, and then the following week, it means that a random star from the opposition won't be able to participate that week. Those ones are really good to play just before a pay-per-view, because with any luck, it might be their champion or one of their main rivalries that you'll have to break up. So it can really sabotage your opponent and give you a really good advantage in that event. The only thing that I will say in the early parts of the game, unless you somehow magically come across a hell of a lot of money, I wouldn't bother doing that. Also, when you're looking to sign free agents or legends, you can check that at the start of each week as well. See who's available, see what their contracts are like. Whatever you do, it's better if you don't get someone that's on a 5 or 10 week contract. You really want to look for permanence, so that even though they're more expensive, if you get them permanent, you don't have to worry about contract negotiations every few weeks. They won't keep bugging you to re-sign them. It's just that one payment, you get them for the length of the game. Not as important for a shorter game, because once you get past that first pay-per-view, there are only 10 weeks left. So 10 weeks is a perfect contract for any of them. What you can put to a very good use though, is down the bottom, you'll see a whole bunch of names that you have no idea who they are. These guys here are great, especially if you need to have, so like a random run-in on someone. You don't really want to use someone else on your roster. You can hire one of these guys, $10,000. It's pretty cheap. They can do the run-in for you, and then you don't have to re-sign them later on. You can, in a longer game though, build these guys up and they can be a major part of your roster. So again, if you wanted to do that, look for anyone that's permanent. You can put them on. Just make sure you know whether you want a bruiser, cruiser, giant, whatever it is that you need, male, female. Just make sure you get the right person for your roster. Next, we take a look at the legends that are available. And just like the free agents, these will change every week. Whether they're 5 weeks or 10 weeks, they will vary. It will change. It's all random. So if you don't get the one that you want this week for the right contract, you might be able to come back next week and it might be a better suit for you. You won't get permanence here until there's only 5 or 10 weeks left in the series. If you do have William Regal as your GM, when you go to use that card, make sure you play it first before you come into this screen. Otherwise, you'll pay for it regardless. It won't then give you the money back. But if you do use it, make sure you use that card on someone that has a 10-week contract. Don't waste a free legend on a 5-week contract, because after that 5 weeks, they'll be asking you for more money to stick around. It's just a hassle, so try and avoid it. With your logistics, always go for the best possible. If you can unlock a new one, make sure you spend the money to unlock it and book it if you can. The better the show, the more fans, the more money that you stand to make. It is a bit of a pain in a shorter game because things will open up faster than you can get money. But in a longer game, this will be so much more important because once you can book the best show every week, you'll be making so much money that it doesn't matter who you want to sign, what matches you want to put on. You should always have the budget to be able to do whatever you want to do. But in the shorter game, you've really got to be careful. So after that first pay-per-view, that's where you unlock things and book the best that you can. Now, when we're setting up our first card, we want to go with our main rivalry. So we're going to put Finn up against Goldberg. You can put the title on the line if you like. You don't have to, but it will help to try and get that rivalry to proc in that first match. Don't worry about specialty match types because it'll just injure your stars. It'll cost you a lot of money right off the bat, and you don't want that. Our opening match, though, I always like to put in the women's rivalry that I want to set up. Again, you can put the title on the line. It just boosts that rating for that first match. Just helps you get these things underway, and it can really help build those rivalries. For the mid card, you can put a tag team in there. I wouldn't put more than one tag team, but also look at who else you've got. Look at your popular stars. You want to try and get the popular guys in the matches as much as possible, because what it will do, it will boost their popularity the more that you use them. And the same goes for some of the promotions. Also, having male, female, and tag team matches on the card, it just gives you a little bit more variety. It helps your overall score for the week. It's not always going to be possible. You may not have the combinations that you really like. Try and match up everything that you want to do for a singles rivalry. Put them in there. So we've got Mace and A-Kid. We've got Akira Tozawa and LA Knight. They'll pair up in singles a little bit later on. For your promotions, this is where you also try and build rivalries and build popularity. Try and get your best guys for the microphone. You'll see the microphone score there. Pick which one you like. So you can pair him up with Cameron Grimes. Remember, the first week is not about blowing your opposition away. It's not about winning the game in week one. It's about setting things up so that in the back part of the game, everything falls into place. So with that third slot, if you run out of rivalries, what you want to do, even the person that was called out is not technically on the card. So I would add one of them into that slot for a self-promotion, and that way they're building up their own popularity along the way. If you use it for charity or advertising, you don't really get a huge payoff from that. And things like charity can actually cause that star to lose popularity as a payoff. So it doesn't really work out very well in the long run. I would always prefer to use them as self-promotions. And what you're going to do for week 2 is turn those promotions into matches, and then some of your matches that are already rivalries, you put them into call-outs and self-promotions. That way you're building up your entire roster, your rivalries. It's all starting to move together, and it's not going to injure your stars before you even get to that first pay-per-view, because they are kind of resting in between. So you want to have a mix of matches and call-outs and promotions. Even if you can rest guys in between, it's not going to hurt them too much. Just don't leave them off the card for too long because their popularity will drop. As you can see, you've already got some matches that are working out quite well, some that are going to require a little bit more building, but you are getting some of these rivalries underway, which is what it's all about. It's going to help you. By the time you get to the pay-per-view, you'll be able to put it all into place. You're going to have good rivalries, popular stars, and it's really going to help you get to where you need to go. There's no perfect formula, and they will throw things at you along the way that's going to derail you a little bit and make you play outside your game plan, but that's perfectly fine. If you follow this plan, you'll have an enjoyable game, and by the time you get to the end of it, you should come out on top. Hopefully this has helped you guys out a lot. If you did find this helpful, don't forget, like and sub. I've got a heap more WWE 2K22 content available on the channel. I hope you guys really enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.